Hi everybody, this is Dino Chris from Prehistoric Facts, and this is a special episode, and we got one dinosaur to talk about, so let's get to it. Today's dinosaur, we're actually going to be talking about Edmontosaurus. And of course, Edmontosaurus in Greek or Latin means Edmonton lizard. Fossils found in North America. Late Cretaceous 70 to 66 to 65 million years ago. About 40 feet long, probably weighs around 3 to 4 tons. Of course, herbivore. And the characteristics of Edmontosaurus is basically it's a hadrosaur or a duck-billed dinosaur. And Edmontosaurus during its time would actually be the most common dinosaur around in its time. So pretty much it would be kind of like the wildebeest or the bison of the late Cretaceous, basically. It's because they roam in huge herds. They're herding animals, so pretty much they actually probably lived into pretty much 10 to 20,000 members in a herd. So pretty much very huge herds. And pretty much with like other hadrosaurs, basically characteristics, basically a kind of like a duck-like bill, basically flat-like beak. It's got rows of teeth, basically very small teeth, basically for chewing, and could make low frequency sounds due to its like honking noises. Basically, it doesn't really have that much. Doesn't really have a crest like a Corythosaurus or Parasaurolophus, but they actually just probably did make low frequency sounds just by using their noses. Basically, they probably did have a little bit like some sacs, basically, kind of like a skin-like sacs. On their noses, kind of make a almost maybe kind of like inflate them a little bit to make the sounds much lower. And with Edmontosaurus, they are very muscular, so pretty much they're very powerful animals. But even though they can run, but you see the thing is with Edmontosaurus is that they don't really have that much of defense. But basically, a healthy adult wouldn't be bothered that much. But if you actually talk about, like, say, the youngsters and the older, sick, or weak, you pretty much are gonna be those kinds of dinosaurs would be very vulnerable. But of course, with healthy adults, if you look at basically what Edmontosaurus really has, no particular weapons to think about, like no horns, no spikes, or anything like that, or clubs. Basically, they're basically just you would think that they're just kind of like a weak herbivore, basically, in terms of defense. Not necessarily. They can actually run. They can run kind of fast. I would say probably almost 20 miles an hour. And pretty much they did use their tail from time to time. And so I would probably suspect that they probably did use their tail for defense at times. And of course, they probably did use their beaks from time to time, but also their weight would actually be a good weapon to use, especially if they're being attacked by dromaeosaurs. Basically, dromaeosaurs would actually be a very common enemy for Edmontosaurus, just because they actually probably did encounter them from time to time. But of course, another predator that was around during its time is Tyrannosaurus rex, and basically there is fossil evidence of Edmontosaurs that have actually had healed bite marks that were pretty much they were shown that were bitten by Tyrannosaurus rex, but the bones actually healed over. Pretty much, there's an Edmontosaurus in Denver, Colorado, basically. That actually has a midsection of the tail. Basically, the spines of the tail are actually and the midsection of the tail are actually bitten off, but even though there's a big like U-shaped pattern on this part of the tail, and pretty much there's regrowth of the bone around it, and that kind of shows that a predatory animal has actually attacked it, crushed one vertebrae at one part of the spine, and basically the other spines were pretty much either just had some bone removed, but basically they actually healed over. And that indicates that this animal survived the attack. And the only animal that was big enough to actually attack it was Tyrannosaurus rex. And also there's the other one that actually has two tail vertebrae. They have actually been fused together because there is a tyrannosaur tooth embedded in one in basically in the vertebrae, and pretty much those vertebrae actually kind of fuse together, and basically there's no movement for that tail. So pretty much that dinosaur probably had arthritis, like really bad in the tail. So it would actually be very painful for that Edmontosaurus to actually use its tail for a weapon at some point. But anyway, that actually kind of shows that Tyrannosaurus Rex probably did actually prey upon them from time to time. And so that really kind of shows that of the ecology of the Hell Creek Formation, basically, or the Lance Formation of North America. And those would actually be the formations of rocks that you would actually find Edmontosaurus. Hell Creek and Lance formations. They're also found in Canada. There's also some that have been found in up as north as Alaska. So pretty much they were almost everywhere in western North America. And other animals that was actually around it, pretty much like a Dromaeosaurus, like a Dromaeosaurus, and also the newest raptor, Dakota raptor. So pretty much Dakota raptor probably actually preyed upon them a lot more than what Tyrannosaurus Rex did. So I would not be surprised that probably Dakota raptor probably were the more modern predators for Edmontosaurus, whereas Tyrannosaurus Rex probably actually attacked Triceratops and some of the horned or some of the ceratopsians that were around during its time. But Tyrannosaurus Rex would actually go after Edmontosaurus if it had to. But even though they would say, hey, it's kind of almost easy prey, they got no defenses, so I'll go get them. But even though they're so well muscled, that pretty much they would escape attack a lot more often. But if you wanted a really good indication of like how muscled Edmontosaurus is, there is actually an Edmontosaurus that was actually found in North Dakota, and it's actually nicknamed Dakota, and it's the most well-preserved dinosaur that has ever been found. Not only is it because that most of the skeleton has been found, but basically the skin is actually fossilized, and it actually shows how well muscled these animals were. So this dinosaur was buried very quickly, so pretty much never really had that chance to actually decay out in the environment. So pretty much it actually decayed in the soil, and pretty much was actually buried underneath a lot of sediment. But also there was another thing about this finus. Basically, there was a crocodile that was actually fossilized with it, and it was pretty much underneath Dakota. So you would actually see that there's crocodile teeth kind of actually underneath Dakota. So pretty much a crocodile tried to bury itself in there, and possibly actually tried to feed off some of the scraps of meat that was actually from this Edmontosaurus. But with Edmontosaurus, they are very common. They would probably have been, because basically fossils have been found north of Alaska all the way down to, say, Texas. But there has actually been some evidence to support that probably they did live down in Mexico. So pretty much they probably lived in some of the some near tropical environments. But they were been around more swampy, forested areas. So they were actually been a lot common around those types of areas in the Lake Cretaceous. And so its predators, the predators it had to worry about was basically Tyrannosaurus Rex, Dromaeosaurus, and Dakota raptor. And if any of you think that probably Nanotyrannus would actually be another predator that would actually be around there, it could be. But there's the debate is still going on about Nanotyrannus. So I'd say the jury's still out on that one. But of course, with Edmontosaurus, with its extinction, basically, like what happened in the Lake Cretaceous, basically a huge catastrophe. Basically, an asteroid the size of Mount Everest basically slammed into the Gulf of Mexico, wiped out most animals of North America, and pretty much created these like events that just changed the environment so quickly. and basically these pretty much most dinosaurs couldn't actually survive that. There were some dinosaurs that did survive after the impact, but basically could have been maybe like a week, could have been a month, could have been a year, or even maybe 10 or 1,000 years. So we don't even know how long dinosaurs actually survived after the main event. So pretty much that's still out there. Anyway, that's it for now, and next week would actually be an answering questions episode. So if you got a question about dinosaurs or any other prehistoric life, feel free to email me at dinocris71@gmail.com. Otherwise, go on my Facebook page, Prehistoric Facts with Dino Chris. Like the page, you can actually post your questions in the comment section on any Facebook post. But remember, keep your questions short and to the point. And also you can follow me on Twitter at CSGRALL. That's my Twitter page. I post pretty cool stuff on there. Take care of the people around you. And also for younger people out there, make sure to listen to your parents, your teachers, and your guardians. Those are the best motivation you could have for a good education. It's very important to have a good education, because with a good education, you get a good job in the future. And as you may know, that I'm not wearing a dinosaur shirt today. It's because, you see, I am wearing a Metallica t-shirt. It's because I love hard rock and heavy metal. Those are my favorite music genres, and basically I love listening to that music, and basically, Metallica is one of my favorite bands of all time, and so I love Metallica. Yeah, obey your master. And anyway, that's it. And I'll see you guys next week.